welcome to another episode of Practical Marketing Tips for Small Law Firms, where we interview industry experts about proven, used today attorney marketing strategies. I'm your host, Cara Pryor. I'm the president of James Publishing. I'm also the founder of our marketing amplifier system. And I spend most of my time really strategizing with lawyers on how to improve their marketing results. And today we have a special guest with us. I'm excited to welcome Jay Harrington. Jay is the co-founder and president of Harrington Communications. He helps lawyers turn expertise into thought leadership and thought leadership into new business. Pretty cool, right? So from strategy to writing, training, coaching, Jay advises his law firm clients on the best approaches to gain awareness and of course, to build trust. He's a lawyer, author, executive coach, marketing consultant. We're thrilled to have him here with us today. Welcome, Jay. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Cara. It's great to be here.
Thanks, Jay. So we're going to dive in. We're going to get right to the meat like we always do. So today we're talking about LinkedIn, specifically how lawyers can really leverage the professional network to ultimately grow their firm. I regularly get questions from attorneys about LinkedIn. So Jay, to start things off, why should attorneys care about LinkedIn? Many of the lawyers I speak with, they're sort of unsure about the opportunities available on LinkedIn. They're not really, sure how to kind of get started or if it is even something that they should care about. So why should attorneys really care about LinkedIn?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think starting with the why is important, and I'm sure we'll get to the how. But as far as why, I think, we have many choices as to how to market and build a practice. So it's a matter of understanding how you can best direct your resources, time, and attention towards something beneficial. And I do think that LinkedIn for many people is a great opportunity. And I think it's an understanding that, as you mentioned, awareness is important, because to market effectively, you need to have top of mind visibility with your ideal client audience. And of the social media networks, in this environment, it's where a lot of marketing is happening, and people are looking for service providers, solutions, answers, and networking. LinkedIn is probably, for many lawyers, the best environment in which to gain that awareness and visibility. It's a network of 750 million people. I think more important than its size is its composition. LinkedIn suggests that 4 out of 5 people on the platform are decision makers of some variety. Oftentimes, I think LinkedIn is thinking about that in terms of business. And I know that perhaps many of the viewers here might have a more consumer-oriented practice as opposed to a corporate-oriented practice. But I still think LinkedIn is really valuable in that respect too, because your consumer clients are probably on LinkedIn as well. The only challenge is perhaps it's a little harder to target individuals who are spread across many different industries, whereas if you have a business practice focused on one or a handful of industries, it's much easier to do. But nonetheless, it's a wide open opportunity for people to gain visibility. And one of the ways to do that, and we'll get more into this, I'm sure, as we dive into how, is creating content and being visible, through your content on the platform. Because another statistic from LinkedIn suggests that somewhere around 1% of all users share content on the platform, even on a weekly basis. So that means 99% of the people are either not necessarily active on the platform, but of the significant number that are, most of them are looking for content, scrolling their feed, but not necessarily jumping into the fray. And I think for lawyers, there's an opportunity there, a lot of white space to jump into. And for those who might be skeptical about, I get that maybe I need to be on LinkedIn, I need to have my profile updated, but am I really going to generate business from the platform? And I'd say that there's 3 ways that happens. One would be people generate inbound leads from people who, see them on the platform looking for someone who does the variety of work they do, and they reach out. That happens for sure. Second would be by being visible on LinkedIn, and oftentimes I believe sharing your content is important on the platform. It warms up otherwise cold opportunities for leads, for outbound outreach, yourself to someone else. So once someone becomes familiar with you and starts to read your content, it's much easier than just sending someone a cold direct message if they don't know who you are. You can establish relationships more easily on the platform. And then third, and oftentimes overlooked, would be I think many lawyers maybe who are skeptical of the benefits of social media are looking for marketing opportunities like public speaking engagements, maybe publishing opportunities in a, in a bar journal or some other magazine that might be appealing to their audience, or other forms of marketing, participating on a webinar panel, whatever the case might be. And what they overlook is the fact that oftentimes the gatekeepers to those opportunities, the event organizers, podcast hosts, editors, reporters who might quote you in a story, they're all on LinkedIn looking for thought leaders. And if you're not visible there, oftentimes you're missing out on those opportunities to gain those other valuable marketing opportunities that exist off of LinkedIn.
Absolutely, Jay. Yeah, so much opportunity. And when we talk about LinkedIn from kind of a referral network or just a networking perspective, right? And we talk about now, especially during the pandemic, it's, how can we don't have to convince lawyers that, referrals from other attorneys and other allied professionals in the area sort of tend to be their most qualified clients. But few attorneys kind of have any sort of system or coordinated approach to kind of, cultivating or just generating any of those new relationships. So how have you kind of seen things shift in the pandemic as it kind of relates to LinkedIn and really the kind of over the larger kind of networking umbrella?
Yeah, it's a great question again. And I think that the answer to that would be, having sort of been on LinkedIn for a long time and really watching the legal marketplace in particular on the platform, watching lawyers start to utilize LinkedIn and do so effectively, even before the pandemic. The pandemic itself kind of put things on turbocharge as it relates to the legal community on LinkedIn. And so what I've seen are many more lawyers who are on the platform, creating content, networking with one another, starting, groups, sort of referral groups with one another through meeting other people on the platform, people across the country, even around the world. You're seeing that because people are more active on the platform. And one of the things that I've witnessed, which has been really interesting, because I think many lawyers find themselves in a position where they might have a practice that's a little more general in nature. They don't have a specific niche that they're targeting. They're not, commercial litigators for the automotive industry in Metro Detroit, and where they can really drill down and appeal to, in-house lawyers at the, tier 1 through 5 auto suppliers. But rather, they are using the platform to generate those referrals you referenced. So they're appealing to and creating content for other lawyers on LinkedIn. And for many people, they find that to be counterintuitive. It's like, well, lawyers don't hire me, but I think most lawyers who are maybe at small to mid-sized practices do understand, lawyers refer other people business, and it's oftentimes the best source of new business for people. So watching people creating content for other lawyers and interacting with them and networking with them. And the beauty of LinkedIn, in my opinion, relative to what we see on maybe some other social media platforms where it can be a bit of a mess and toxic in some ways, the LinkedIn legal community is super supportive of one another. I very rarely have seen any instances where people who've complained about toxicity or people, cutting other people down. It's very supportive. People are looking for opportunities to engage with other people's content, make new connections, and try to drive new business to each other.
That's actually a really good point about the, sort of supportive nature of LinkedIn, which is, it can be starkly different than some of the other social networks that, that especially, that attorneys might be on. So that's a good point. So before we kind of dive in a little bit to the specifics, Jay, how did you kind of develop these proven LinkedIn strategies? Were you using a similar approach to grow your own business? I follow you on LinkedIn. You're quite prolific. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, content creation has always been at the cornerstone of our marketing strategy for our own business. I don't know if we dial the clock back 8-9 years. I was always creating content. I had a blog, for our agency's website. I would write for other publications in the industry. I write a monthly column for law.com, and I write one for Attorney at Work, and other, write for JD Supra and other places. And that's all been very beneficial. But I realized over time, kind of just observing LinkedIn, being a little bit more of an observer rather than an active participant, I saw other people who were getting tremendous amount of engagement on their content. And there's a great new book by Ron Friedman called Decoding Greatness. And it's this whole notion of if you aspire to the success of someone, take a closer look at how they did it and try to reverse engineer what they did and adapt some of those same practices for yourself. So what I saw was, I might be getting, whatever, a few hundred clicks on a blog article I wrote for my website. But these people were clearly getting, thousands and thousands of views on their content on LinkedIn. So I really just went, kind of all in on LinkedIn content. And it's both been through practice of my own and observation from other people to see how beneficial LinkedIn can be from that standpoint. I mean, I think if trends continue for the rest of this year, I might get 30,000 visitors to my website this year. I'll get well over 3 million views of my content on LinkedIn. So it's just a massively more, I guess, higher visibility platform for content creation than anywhere else that I'm aware of. And that sort of visibility translates into opportunities, regardless of what service you're providing. So I mean, I think that's, and the one other thing I'll mention on that point is, regardless of what type of content you create, I think of LinkedIn as sort of the bottom rung on the ladder, meaning I've written 4 books. I have a podcast. I write a lot of articles that are longer form. I don't write anything until I've sort of tested that idea, that core idea, as part of a LinkedIn post. And LinkedIn is the one way that I know of where I can get instantaneous feedback from my audience that I've curated of lawyers as to whether that idea resonates with them. Because I think any content creator knows, you think you have a good idea. You invest a lot of time, and it could be a book, or it could be, even 4 or 5 hours on an article, and you don't really have any idea whether that's going to connect with your audience. But if you're testing those ideas on LinkedIn through short posts, it's a really good signal as to whether or not to invest the time into something longer form. So that sort of strategy of, it all starts as a LinkedIn post, then it might become a podcast episode, then it might become a blog post, and then ultimately, in certain rare instances, it might become a book. But we often talk about repurposing longer form content into shorter form social media posts. I kind of take the opposite approach, where I repurpose up into longer form content, and it all starts with LinkedIn.
Smart. Yeah, I like that approach. And this is really kind of a look under the hood, really what has worked for you. So we've clearly established LinkedIn is important for law firms, but many attorneys, they're still just not quite sure how to jump in. What's your advice for getting started? What kind of content should they share? How do they provide value? How do they kind of showcase their expertise? How do they spark engagement? What's your advice for really getting started?
Yeah, I'd say a few things. I mean, at first, I'd say take a look at your profile, right? I mean, that's kind of the gateway where people matriculate back to your profile if they've seen something else about your content you shared, or even they're just doing due diligence on you and they're finding your profile on LinkedIn, they're checking it out. So I'd say pay attention to that. And
talking
in doing
about their personal profile, right? Not their business page on LinkedIn.
Yeah, that's right.
There.
Yeah, their personal profile.
Yeah.
I find that nobody cares about company pages on LinkedIn. They care about you as an individual. So when it comes to your personal profile on LinkedIn, a few quick tips. One would be just really understand who is your ideal client audience and craft a profile that appeals to them, right? That would be your headline, that short snippet that goes underneath your name on your profile, and then your about section in particular. And think about who is my ideal client audience and how can I position myself as the guide who can help them get what they want. And in doing so, don't just copy and paste your website bio over to LinkedIn. Website bios are oftentimes written in the third person. Write a first person profile on LinkedIn because it's a social network and people want to get to know you as a person and not just as a professional. So that's just one quick thing. And then in terms of other forms of engagement, one of the first and best ways to get started on LinkedIn is to start viewing and engaging with other people's content. Sometimes people are hesitant to create content of their own, in the form of posts or otherwise on the platform. Leaving thoughtful, interesting, substantive comments on other people's posts is a great way to not only ease into this whole idea of sharing thought leadership on LinkedIn, because a comment can be a form of thought leadership, certainly, but it's also a way to get visibility from people you're trying to add to your network and have them start to take notice of the actions you're taking on LinkedIn once you start creating more content. So I think that's really important. And then you'll have a strategy. This is sort of building up to creating and sharing content of your own. Have a strategy in mind. I'd like to think of it as having maybe 3 or 4 pillars. And pillars would be ideas that, again, are ideas that are appealing to the audience you're trying to reach. So that really is practice dependent. So if what you're trying to do is generate referrals from other lawyers on a platform, you've got to write content that's interesting to other lawyers. So that might be, if you're a law firm leader, how do you run a small law firm effectively? That's interesting content. I know there's people on the platform doing that sort of thing, and they're building large networks of other lawyers. Frank Ramos would be someone to look at in that regard. Frank has a network of over 60,000 followers on LinkedIn. I know him. He's a fantastic person. He is a prolific content creator on LinkedIn, and he's generating tons of referrals from other lawyers. I worked at a very large firm when I started my career, Skadden Arps, and I remember how many emails went through my inbox every day from other lawyers in the firm saying, "Hey, do you know anyone in Knoxville, Tennessee, who does family law? We have a client, they need a referral for their sister or whatever." Those emails came through all the time. And LinkedIn is a way to be at the top of people's minds when that sort of email goes around at various law firms around the country. And you think of, I don't know anyone in Knoxville, but I do know that guy on LinkedIn who seems to be pretty smart and shares content all the time. So I don't know, these are types of things to think about, but I'd say have a strategy. And the strategy starts with, what are the ideas that I want to share, so that I can then start thinking about those content topics. But then as a starting point, profile, comment on other people's posts, and just start building your network and connecting with people who are in your target audience.
Excellent. Jay, how do you feel about kind of industry groups on LinkedIn, joining groups and kind of starting to participate and adding value in that way? Do you have any tips there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that can be worthwhile. For some reason, LinkedIn hasn't quite figured out the group dynamic yet. I know like Facebook groups are very active. LinkedIn groups, for whatever reason, there's a few features on LinkedIn, groups being one, writing articles as opposed to posts is another, where it's just not getting all that much traction. I know they're trying to figure this out. I actually got a survey from LinkedIn last week asking about, because I run a group, but it's like a small private group, and they're just seeking ways to create more engagement within groups. The thing I like about groups, though, is that if you have, again, a target audience in mind, a group of people who you want to add to your network, it's a great way to find those people, right? LinkedIn it's not just a content platform or a networking site, it's a search engine. You can find the people you're looking for and you want to connect with. And industry groups are a great way to do that, depending on, there's thousands of groups. And so you can probably find then one that relates to the practice that you have, and you can find people to connect with. And so, yeah, I mean, that's probably, I'd say you're better off. The bigger ROI is really focusing on your feed, the people you're connected with, as opposed to the people you share groups with. But finding groups is a great way to add people to your network so that they show up in your feed.
Nice. Good.
Mm-hmm.
So what about, let's get specific on some content. So what kind of content really is sort of the most effective? Where have you seen, the content really kind of take off and start to really, generate some engagement, and what type of content? So not just topics, but we're talking about, written books and booklets. Are we talking about videos? Are we talking about a combination? Maybe we can get a little bit more specific on the actual content that you recommend sharing.
Yeah. Okay, great. So one thing, I'll start with maybe an area that many people focus on, but isn't all that effective, which would be using LinkedIn to promote content that you've created elsewhere. That many people are using LinkedIn to share links to content that might live on their blog or some other website. LinkedIn doesn't like people leaving LinkedIn, so they tend not to give a lot of visibility to posts that you create that include links to other content. So what I like to tell my clients is, don't think of LinkedIn as a place to promote content from your blog. Think of LinkedIn as your blog. And this gets back to this whole notion of using LinkedIn as kind of the first step or the first rung on the ladder of content creation. So one of the types of content to think about creating would be the text only post. So, when you're in your feed, you'll see, create a post, click on that, and you just write a short blog post. I think LinkedIn gives you 3,000 characters, which is probably around 500 words at most. So it used to be 1,300 characters, so you can get a fair amount of content in there. But that's the type of content that LinkedIn gives a lot of visibility to. A text only post relative to a shared link is probably going to get 3 to 4 to 5 times the amount of views. So text only posts are great. Video tends to work well in addition. And I would say that when people are sharing you talked about like booklets or ebooks, that kind of thing, you can share a PDF or a JPEG. They call them documents, share a document on the platform. That tends to get a lot of visibility as well. So those are the kind of content types. And then as far as what type of content to create in terms of, the substance of the content, I think on LinkedIn and any social platform, storytelling is key. So people are looking for stories. And when I say storytelling, what I mean is sharing some experience of yourself, someone else. Maybe this is a client experience where obviously you're not naming the client or identifying them in any respect, but sharing an instance in which, you were part of an experience where the client overcame a challenge or ran into an issue, and you're telling that story, and that story's building up to a lesson for the reader to gain something from, some takeaway from that experience. So people, I think, generally like story better than just us talking at them or even just shouting advice at them all the time. They want that advice, but they want it wrapped in a story so that it's more emotive, it's more interesting, and it's more memorable. So that to the extent you can do that, your content will tend to perform better on LinkedIn. I know that was a big unlock for me and many others as well, where it's all about sharing stories, again, giving people a sense of not just who we are as professionals, but people as well. And just through enough experience, I know, because I've done enough of both, the storytelling content brings a lot more visibility to you and your profile than just the straight kind of advice type content you might have in a blog post or something like that.
I love that storytelling approach. I mean, that is so head on. And, we certainly don't want to be shouting, book a consult, free consultation, right? I mean, it couldn't be further from that. We actually have a personal injury attorney here in Orange County who he does a really good job of regularly posting videos on LinkedIn, kind of outlining his past cases with sort of varying fact patterns, right? So that prospects can watch him talk about a specific situation that may be very similar to the legal situation that they're experiencing. So I think, really kind of wrapping it into a story and, describing how the burden was really lifted once the attorney was involved, and here's what the process was like, and here's the result. I think that narrative, it can be really compelling, and it also kind of takes away sometimes just generating ideas for posts can be difficult. So, if you kind of just wrapping this into your existing workflow or your existing process, after you wrap a case, with a fact pattern that might be different from the last video that you shot, just sit down and shoot a video or certainly text only. That advice on kind of the native LinkedIn post, that's so spot on. And you're right. You see all the time sharing links, right? Especially to blogs. It's always, blog posts, taking the LinkedIn members off LinkedIn and trying to drive that traffic. I just feel like that's, you'll probably be spinning your wheels a little bit there. So I love that spot on advice, Jay. Thanks. So let's talk a little bit about, well, first, I mean, I don't think it's any secret. There's a lot of noise on LinkedIn, right? I mean, personally, I'm flooded every day with direct messages and solicitations from people I don't know about topics I might not be interested in. What's your advice for kind of cutting through that noise, starting to make some meaningful connections, whether we're talking about, and then maybe we can also kind of parlay that into the direct messaging versus the public posting that you've been talking about. So maybe we can start to go in that direction.
Yeah, well, they're definitely very interconnected. So I mean, you're right. I mean, people do get annoyed. I mean, you don't do the following. Send a connection request. Someone accepts your connection request, and you immediately hit them up with something that's transparently a pitch, right? I mean, I think most people understand that, but maybe not, because I share your experience where I get pitched all the time, and immediately after accepting a request. So you don't want to do that. What I think is been effective for myself, and I know others, is the following, where have a long-term approach, have an abundance mindset around, I'm going to be generous with my ideas and I'm going to share content and I'm going to, trust that people are going to start to, see me, maybe even like me, and ideally trust me through some of the content I'm creating over time. And then I find that, over time, as you do that consistently, you'll start to see, and you're connecting with more people again within the audience you're trying to cultivate and curate. You'll start to see, certain cohorts of people who are consistently engaging with your content. For example, liking your posts or commenting on them, that kind of thing. And over time, that might be a signal where it's an opportunity for you, as you're moving to like, certainly if they're commenting on your posts, it's a good idea to comment back, right? You're able to then start engaging in communication with them. It's still asynchronous, but it's much closer. You're much closer to your audience than you are if all you're doing is publishing content on your website, right? Where that is very sort of arm's length with your audience, as opposed to LinkedIn, where if someone comments on your post, comment back. It's a starting point of a relationship. It might be very early stages, but it's still a starting point. But over time, you'll see same people showing up. You'll be engaging with their content. Hopefully, that same sort of reciprocal nature of support is happening. And I think at that point, there is a point in time in which a direct message from you to them becomes appropriate, and especially those who are showing up in your feed quite a bit and supporting your content. And that might just be something like, I really appreciate, I see that you've been, reacting to my posts. I really appreciate your support. Thank you. I hopefully I can do the same for you, that kind of thing. And you leave it there. And then, you see what happens next. Sometimes you'll get nothing back from that person. But sometimes they'll say, oh, great. I really like your content. Happy to do it. It's great to, finally connect with you. And then you just have to use your judgment at that point. It might be time at that point to say, hey, would love to maybe learn more about what you do. Let's jump on a Zoom call, whatever. So it's just sort of this slow, incremental relationship building as it would happen in the real world, but just happening, where your content is the starting point and these little kind of baby steps towards a more robust relationship occur. But that's to me how you use direct message. You don't pitch your services unless it just seems obvious that you would do that based on contextualized circumstances. But in almost all instances, it's just building a slow incremental relationship, and direct messaging is a way to do that.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely interesting, because certainly there are some LinkedIn consultants who have very specific recommendations about gaining traction, right?
Mm-hmm.
Request, 100 connection requests a day, 50 direct
Mm-hmm.
messages a day, follow up within X number of days. It sounds like
Right.
your approach is a bit more organic. Do you have any specific kind of benchmarks, or is it really kind of this, organic relationship building that you're referring
Mm-hmm.
to?
Yeah, I don't have a specific formula. I feel like what I try to teach and talk about are frameworks and principles, right? And I think that, like always, if you're looking to gain, relationships, like think in terms of how can I help other people? Think like, how can I help people on LinkedIn today? Not how can people on LinkedIn help me? If you do that, it's long-term. You don't come onto LinkedIn if you need like a new client next week. It's just probably not going to happen. But if you have a longer-term approach, this organic approach of relationship building and positioning yourself as a thought leader can really work. So, metrics or benchmarks to look at, like organic follower count going up, like, right, where you don't want to necessarily be in a position. I think there's nothing wrong with sending connection requests, but you want to see more people connecting with you and following you over time, because that means your content is working. It's making an impact on people and they want to see more of it. So they're reaching out to you. Another metric that I look at, which I don't know, what I call it is views beyond follower count. So if there are more people viewing your posts than are people in your network, it means it's having an impact. It's getting out to more people than are just within your specific network. And that's an important benchmark to look at, because the first step in business development on LinkedIn is organic growth of your network. because it means that what you're saying is resonating with people. And then the inbound opportunities start flowing from there, and the opportunities for you to do outbound outreach, and all of those gatekeepers I was talking about earlier who are looking for experts, who are creating interesting content, start reaching out to you, and sort of a flywheel effect over time that starts working in your favor.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jay, before we wrap up, what type of time commitment are we talking about? I think the time commitment can be a common objection from attorneys, right? They're always dealing with pressing client matters. Do I have time for LinkedIn? Is this something I can outsource? So what sort of time commitment do you think is required to be effective on LinkedIn in the long run?
Yeah, well, and that's a great question, because this is an area where I do in fact sort of have a formula that I suggest people follow, or at least think about in terms of crafting their own formula. But I write a post on LinkedIn at least every business day, but I don't write every business day. What I do is every day I'm looking for ideas to write posts about, and I'm cataloging those ideas. And that might be conversations with clients, other things I've read, podcasts I've listened to, whatever. However, we get our subconscious mind working on the problem of generating ideas for content. That's the work I'm doing in the background on a daily basis. I post every day on LinkedIn, and then I try to comment on people. I try to comment back when people post, post on my or comment on my post. Sorry. Probably for me, it's about 30 minutes a day. Where I devote a little more time is on the weekend, where I carve out like 90 minutes and I try to batch write posts. I try to write, all of my posts for the week in like that 90-minute period of time, because I find that, the first 15 minutes of writing is very unproductive, but, the last 30 minutes of it is super productive because you can get in a flow state. So I would say for me, and I might be at the, using LinkedIn more than many of the lawyers who are listening to this will, but I'm spending probably 30 minutes a day on the platform, and then maybe 90 minutes on the weekend writing my posts for the week. I think that, if someone is writing 2 or 3 posts a week, they could probably have a time commitment of no more than 2 hours a week on LinkedIn and be really successful with it.
Well, I mean, even at that level, it sounds pretty manageable, in the batch writing the posts. That's a great productivity tip.
Yeah.
So Jay, tell everyone a little bit more about what it's like working with you, and certainly how lawyers can get in touch.
Sure. So, I mean, probably the things that are most relevant. We have a marketing agency, so we do many of the things that you would expect from a marketing agency, but we do focus quite a bit on what we call thought leadership marketing. So if you're looking to optimize, especially from a strategic standpoint, how to get more mileage out of things like content creation and in many different forms, we help clients with that kind of thing. We also help in the actual implementation or execution of the content creation. So writing, we're involved in podcasting support for many clients. And then in terms of me personally, what I spend a lot of my time doing within our company on behalf of clients would be strategic thinking and planning, really helping my clients, especially in the small to mid-sized law firm market, create effective marketing strategies, marketing plans, business plans of other varieties. I do one-on-one coaching for individual lawyers and law firm leaders on a host of issues. And then we do training on things like optimizing LinkedIn as well.
Excellent. And what's the best way for people to get in touch?
Well, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. It's probably the best way. That's where you can kind of find everything that I'm doing. But a couple of the things you might want to check out, you can go to my website, which is hcommunications.biz. I have a podcast called The Thought Leadership Project. And I have 4 books I've written, all for lawyers, that are available. You can find those on my website or on Amazon.
Excellent, Jay. Good stuff. Thanks again for sharing your wisdom with us today. You are wonderful. We really appreciate it. And everyone, be sure to join us for our next episode of Practical Marketing Tips for Small Law Firms, happening very soon. Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.